Welcome to the Travel Business Unpacked, where we break down what it takes to build a thriving travel business. Here's your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Travel Business Unpacked podcast. I am Sandy Saburn. I am filling in for Meredith while she is off at ASTA's River Cruise Expo, where she is the speaker. And I am thrilled today to get to host the podcast, first of all. And I am especially thrilled to have my colleague, Kristin Matthews, who is our VP of Professional Development, here to join me. So, hello, Kristin.
Hello, Sandy. Thank you for having me.
I think this is going to be a great conversation. It's incredibly timely because what we're going to talk about today is one of the things that a lot of people who get into the travel industry don't think about having to handle, and that is crisis management. So, Kristin, obviously, being our current Vice President of Professional Development, you probably have a background, and I know that you do, a background in travel. So tell us, how did you come to work in the travel industry, and what's your background?
Well, I came in from a completely different industry that I had been doing for many, many years in education and counseling, and decided I wanted to make a shift into this fantastic industry. And so when I say literally gifted, Travel Network was the one that really stood out to me. It was, and I joined the Travel MBA program back in 2017 and did that, had my own business, really, really good business. Did some mentoring for Gifted Travel Network on the side because that's a big part of how we support our advisors. And then at some point came on full time as director of the program and then vice president of the program, and have really worked to support not only our Travel MBA program, but everybody that's in our ecosystem, some sort of professional development that they can have on their journey as their business grows. And so what we're talking about today is a really, really important part of that because, we do a lot of training on how to book and, like chances are if you're in this industry or you're thinking about going into this industry, you're thinking, how do I book trips, right? How do I get those itineraries out and those proposals? We do things a little bit differently in that we talk about the entrepreneurship just as much, if not more, in the
Hmm.
beginning. And so the crisis management conversation that we're going to have today is really an important part of that I'm not sure everybody has enough real understanding of how to navigate that when things come up.
Right. And it's certainly not the sexy part of working in the travel industry, that's for sure. And we don't like to focus on the negative at Gifted Travel Network, but we also have to be practical and that this is a reality. Things are going to happen, especially if your clients have to fly somewhere to take the trip that they want to take, because that is just the reality of the world that we live in, is that things happen, whether it's weather related, doesn't have to be some big catastrophic something, but you never know when a volcano is going to erupt and affect air travel or something's going to happen. So I think that one of the things that people listening to this podcast, I'm sure know by now, is that education is at the heart of everything we do at Gifted Travel Network, and it's what really sets us apart. And having opportunities to have conversations like this in our various programs, have people ask questions, and have people who are on the ground doing this day to day, like your mentors, makes a huge difference for people. And I'm excited that you have condensed a lot of this wisdom and are going to share it with people today. So, where do we start with talking about managing crisis as a travel advisor?
I think the first place that we should start in unpack, if you will, since
Yes.
that's the name of the podcast, is that it is so important and it's the differentiator for travel advisors in a professional um, business to showcase the skill that they can to help the clients that are either in crisis, in something happening, or just your daily, flight backups, whatever it is. That's where we really showcase what we do and how we do it. And that's going to, I believe, continue to draw consumers into using a travel advisor as things just keep being nutty as they do, right? It's always going to be uncertainty. And it also keeps your clients coming back because they feel so heard and seen and taken care of. So I think it's really important to talk about why we're talking about it and what we need to really show our brilliance with this. The other reason I think it's really important to talk about is that for many of us, we are solopreneurs. We are doing this by
Mhm.
ourselves. We're at home most often. Sometimes there's people still in an employee situation. But for a lot of our members, they have their own businesses. And so some of these challenges can make you feel very, very alone and confused by what to do. It can make you feel frustrated because you've done so much work on an itinerary and then it doesn't happen. There's cancellations, and so you're not
Mhm.
getting paid for that. You can have your own fear and anxiety about what's going on, and sometimes I don't want to say that we sit around and complain like misery loves company, but sometimes just having a support system, even if there's no great answers, of just being like, yeah, this is a tough time. I think it's really important for advisors to acknowledge their own feelings about what's going on for them and their business and their clients, and then have that support network to get through that. So that's why we're talking about it today, for people to feel like you've got some sort of guidance or some sort of just like, hey, we see you. This is a thing that's just going to be ongoing in this industry. So that's where I wanted to start, was just say, like, we know that business ownership is amazing and what you can do, there's no ceiling for it, right? The
Mhm.
potential is all there. And it's not, like you said, all glamour. It's great to be on a fam, it's great to go experience things, but there's some real practicalities that I think are important when we really start to look at how you do your day to day as well.
And I think that's what you said earlier is a great point about misery loves company, and that's not why we're talking about this. And it's not what advisors do when they come together to
Right.
talk about how to handle a situation like this. It's really more, much more about just having a community that can support one another. Especially in a time of crisis, you need that opportunity to be able to say to somebody, okay, this happened. I think this is how I'm going to deal with it. What do you think? And have somebody else to either bounce ideas off of or to give you another way to look at something.
Yeah, and I'm really thankful that I do that a lot with our mentors, because I meet regularly with the mentors that we have that are mentoring our advisors, coaching our advisors, and they are all with their own businesses, usually
Mhm.
top producers, or they're really going strong. And I, even this week, was speaking to someone. They're like, the best thing about how we handled it personally in GTN for the pandemic was that we just had that time to come together
Mhm.
to share best practice, to share frustrations, and to just kind of keep everybody feeling like they were part of a team, even though they were by themselves. So it is really important to not say, like, we're not coming together and just being like, oh, this is terrible. We're really trying to uplift each other and support each other, which I think is just so valuable as a business owner.
Incredibly
And
valuable because, as you said, this is an industry that tends to be solopreneurs, tend to be working at home. So there's a certain isolation factor there. And when you're especially dealing with a stressful situation, all those things can compound to make things worse. So let's jump into some practical wisdom and advice about the whole issue of crisis management.
so I think I want to start with being on the proactive side. Okay. So this
Okay.
is something that you can do ahead of when things are going astray in the moment. And I think, Sandy and I, you and I both are of similar mind that communication is the key to everything. And
Mhm.
so the first part of communication, even before you say or write anything, is understanding the sources that you're using and the facts. And so my number one tip is stay informed, find the sources that are reputable and firsthand, and then bookmark those, keep those close at hand so that you can refer to those when you need to, when there is a moment where you need to reach out to people and start to really convey a message. So we like to look at the STEP program
Mhm.
site, and I like to have clients do that. I often look at travel insurance companies, like they'll often put things out there. Asta will put some things out there. I mean, there's obviously news that we can find in other venues as well. My cautionary tale of that is that you need to always cite a first source, not a secondary source. You need to stay off of any sort of social media platform as a reliable source because chances are it is not. You don't want to repost anything that is not accurate. And so it's really a stick to the facts. And the the one little caveat I will say, because I'm getting ready to go on a trip and I was just looking at TSA, um, and I noticed at the top that it said that it was not being updated at this moment. So I do think you also, even with what you would normally consider a reliable source, just make sure that it's up and running and being updated in real time. So, you'll have to use your discernment on that a little bit, but I do feel like we have some places that you can go to make sure that's your one place to go. Host agencies are also great. Things change so fast that it's hard
Right.
for us as an agency to keep aggregating and updating, but we do try to work with all the other sources as well. And when we can share information, we try to do that. So that is step one.
First
Step
thing is to prepare yourself so that
Yes.
when something happens, you know where to go to, bookmark all these sites, the State
Yep.
Department and all the different websites that you know you're gonna wanna reference. Okay.
Yeah, and that goes as what far as even I get updates from airline carriers on if
Mhm.
there's a waiver or something. And so like being part of some of the things for the airlines as well is really helpful. And when you're booking a client, however you're doing that, make sure that you understand at that time what the cancellation and modification policies are so that you're not scrambling when something happens and you have to look it up. Now, those of us with a lot of different clients and trips happening at once, you may not know that off the top of your head, but being able to find that in the terms and conditions, making sure that that's very apparent somewhere in your CRM and whatever invoices you give to your clients, make sure that that's something that you can familiarize yourself with fairly quickly. The next thing is travel insurance.
Mhm.
A comprehensive travel insurance should always be offered to your clients.
A third
In
party
addition to
insurance.
third party, in addition to whatever the supplier partner is offering, I think we at GTN are very firm on the fact that a comprehensive third party is going to be the most holistic thing that you can package product that you can give to your clients. Encourage that, talk to your clients about it, document that you offered it, very, very important. And also make sure that you understand what it covers and what it does not, and that
Right.
they understand what it covers and what it does not.
And of course, that
We
all has to happen before something happens, otherwise
Exactly.
it's
Yes.
an issue and then it's not covered. So that's something that you have to have in the back of your mind early in the process.
Always early, always, always, right, within 14 days of deposit really is something that you should be doing. And also remember, although there probably are a few of us out there that are licensed insurance agents, most of us are not. We are not selling insurance, we are offering insurance, and any questions about what's covered and what's not covered should go right to the insurance carrier. They are the experts, and it is, I think, a good idea in the beginning and not wait until something happens so the clients understand what is a covered reason and what is not. Because what we as a layperson would think like, "Well, that's a thing, I can't go on my trip." Oftentimes government shutdowns, pandemics, acts of war, acts of God, those types of things are not covered. And so, still not a reason to not offer it. They've got to have it for a multitude of other reasons, but it's important
Mhm.
that they understand that before something happens. And then they're really upset and frustrated, thinking one thing, but really that's not covered.
Right. Very good point.
And then I would say the final proactive step that I would do is taking both of these things, like the travel insurance and the communication and the reliable sources. And I would create some templates in my CRM ahead of time that would just state, strikes, advisory, weather conditions, something that you've templated. You're going to have to change it to fit the situation. But having a library of things that you can proactively send to clients ahead of time because as we started this part of the conversation, communication is key. You've got to have the components of it in order to do it. So that's the last thing that I would say. Do what you can. I mean, AI has a lot of great things out there. You can share resources with each
Mhm.
other, but just making sure that you have some sort of communication that you can very quickly say, "Hey, I know this is happening. I'm on it. I'm watching it. we're going to move forward. Same with travel insurance. Like I always had templated, like, this is why you should have travel insurance and sent that every single time. So documentation is also very, very important. So those are the, I would say, proactive measures.
And I will just add as a personal note, when I was an advisor, if somebody said, I don't need travel insurance, always have them sign a waiver saying that you offered it and that they decided they didn't need it. So that when they come back and say, well, I wish you'd offered me travel insurance, you have proof that you did and they declined it.
Amen. Yep, that's absolutely that's what we that's what we tell everybody
Yes.
on the daily. So
All
yeah,
right. So that's the proactive things. You're going to get all those things in place
yep.
and that's going to help you be ready. And then what comes next?
Then the shoe drops and then you got to go. And
Mm.
so at that point, we've got some real-time strategies that you can do in that reactive mode. This is not an all-encompassing list, but some helpful tips that
Mhm.
might help you get through this. The first one is to divide your clients into those that are currently in travel, about to travel, or on the ground somewhere. And you want to reach out to that group first. And again, we're not waiting for them to reach out to us. We're proactively sending a quick email or however their best mode of communication that you've already talked with them about prior, that you've got all of their emails. You can reach out to them at any point. Do recap the facts that you know, but stay calm, not getting into much emotion. If they're traveling, you probably are going to have to take action. There will be
Mhm.
something that you're going to need to reroute or cancel or whatever it is depending on the situation. And so you're going to take action, giving them the information as you go. And sometimes it's just that I'm not sure yet and I'm working with my partner on the ground, or I'm working with my air desk or whatever it is, or you can work with the air desk depending on how you book it. But really it's reassurance that you are on it, that you're monitoring it, and you're making changes as they can be made so that that client feels safe while they're out there in the world. Then you've got the next group, and that group is going to either be traveling. I mean, sometimes it's like a year out and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to cancel my trip because there's something happening. And you're like, okay. So I get it. There's a lot going on right now, but you want to proactively reach out to them as well. So people that are going to a destination that's affected, they're an adjacent destination and they're like, ooh, what happens if I'm in Mexico and I'm in this, but what happens if something happens on the other side of the country? So you really do want to try to be
Right.
empathetic to what they are experiencing. I think best practice in this point, once you start to communicate with those templates, usually is just to say that you're monitoring the situation and that as things come, as you get closer to the trip, we will make decisions together and based on, whatever's happening at that time. So I think in this case, it is just important to just stay in touch, right? And we do talk about that a lot as well. Staying in touch with the clients is how you show the value as a professional luxury travel advisor. So no different than your regular day. What is something that you need to be aware of though is many, many clients, as you probably most people know, are going to say, well, is it safe? Should I
Right.
go? What
Right.
should I do? And you are an advisor for sure, but you are not a security expert. You are not a infectious disease doctor. You are not a psychic. You are not even in any position to give a yes or no, it's go time, you should wait, unless you're being told by your partners that it is not happening, it's
Right.
not safe. At the same time, I think we all have to look at things through the lens of who your traveler is,
Mhm.
because we all have different levels of comfort and risk aversion or tolerance. And you will see that even when they come in for an inquiry. Sometimes it's like, I want to go bungee jumping in New Zealand. And sometimes it's like, I really want a guide to pick me up from the train station and make sure that I'm getting everywhere that I need to be. So even within a couple minutes of qualifying your client or doing that discovery process with your client, you're going to get a pretty good understanding of where they sit on that spectrum. And you really have to kind of match that with them. So,
Right. Because
in order to
everybody's going to have a little bit different comfort level with
right,
with things. So you're going to have some people are going to be fine and just are going to keep an eye on things, but are going to keep moving forward, and others who are, like you said, it's a year away, but they're already thinking they need to cancel.
Yeah, the ones that are really hard, I've found most tricky are the husband and wife that are different in the style. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
one is like, "Yeah, we're going," and the other one's like, "I'm not going." Or a multi-gen and, grandparents are worried and the kids are like, "We're doing this." So I think even within one group of trip, it can be it can be a little tricky because
Right.
everybody is really different. And I think the key for that is start with empathy and listening.
Right.
Calm calm, not talking, just listening to their concerns, listening to their fears, acknowledging and validating that, yeah, this is a scary time or this is a frustrating time. And yes, we've had 42 inches of snow in Rhode Island and you're not going to Rhode Island, whatever it is, that empathy of like frustration or anger, however that shows up first. And then it's solutions if they're warranted because it's coming up on travel, or let's just pump the brakes a little bit and then we'll just keep monitoring and see how things are going. So
And is
without getting
correcting misinformation part of that? You listen first, then you correct misinformation. So if they've been watching something on social media that's completely wrong.
I again, that goes back to knowing your facts and being able to state like solid, trusted resources. But all the time, I mean, people are coming at it. It's like, I don't know, my hairdresser's cousin knew some guy who said he traveled through. And then you're like, yeah, maybe. But I think so that for me is what the listening that you start with just by the way you qualify your clients is so
Right.
important because they will almost tell you everything you need to know if you're quiet long enough, or if you
Mhm.
ask just one or two questions, they're really going to give it to you, right? If they're even down to like, why are you nervous? And it could be some sort of like hearsay or misinformation that you can correct pretty quickly, and then they're going to be fine. Or it's something really, warranted, and then you have to look at what other opportunities you have to move things around for them.
All right. Very good. So
Yep.
you've had a conversation with the client, you found out what is going on, and then I guess you get to the point where a decision has to be made of, do we go? Do we not go? Do we wait? How do you handle that situation with them?
So for me personally, because this came up every single day in the pandemic, not just once, but like multiple times because things
Right.
just kept getting pushed back and pushed back. I think it's if it's a cancellation by the partner, that's the easy one, right? Like they're going to say it's canceled. You either
It is
can
what it is. There's
it
no
is what it is, right?
missing something.
They've got no recourse, right? You're just going to either rebook, see what the cancellation policy is, or, travel insurance in some odd cases. But in that one, it's pretty easy. Like, how do you want to go? Do you want to just try to cancel this and get what you can back? Or do you want to rebook and look at that? Oftentimes, those things, those flights, those tours, those cruises are not going to cancel until the last minute. That is when things get very uncomfortable for people because they're waiting for something to happen almost down to the minute, and no one's going to want to cancel any of those cruises or tours or things until they know they absolutely have to. So that middle waiting period is the hard part. And they
Right.
sometimes have to make a decision on, do you feel comfortable going, knowing all that you do, even if it's still, departing? That is a them issue, right? All you can do is say, I'm going to help you the best I can, wade through the different options. You tell me what that solution is, and I will do my best to see what I can do about it. And that
You're
for
not
me
making the decision for them.
cannot, absolutely cannot. No, 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 no. And I think, again, I'm a pretty straightforward person. I like to say that stuff up front, right? Like
Right.
this is, I'm here as a guide to you and a resource to you, but I am not here as the one that's making any decisions. And so managing the expectation of that. And even then people are going to be like, but what if it were your trip? What would you do? Like,
Right.
how would you handle it? And you've got to be really careful to not push decisions on them in a way that just because you would do it that way. So,
And
you gotta be careful
I'm
with them.
sure that's hard for a lot of people because a lot of people who get into this business not only do it because they love travel, but they love helping people. And that's their natural inclination is they want to help. They want to make things better. That's one of the things that we saw as a benefit from the pandemic was that people recognized having a travel advisor is incredible because you've got somebody who's got your back. But there is a line and you have to remember that you've got to protect yourself and your business too, right?
You absolutely do. There's a couple of different shadow sides for that. The one is you do have to protect your own business. People will react differently under pressure, under crisis, and when they're about to lose money on a deposit. It brings out a side of people that you don't think that, but they were so nice and everything was going well. But just reactions can be very, very different, which is why that documentation and the managing of the expectations beforehand is really, really important. But the other side of it, and I hear this a lot, even from people that are in our top producing and our mentors, is that people start to take the feeling of having to not disappoint their client, right? They
Right.
take that on themselves, like, God, I don't want to let them down. I feel so bad that this is happening. And that's normal. We're human, right? Like I said in the beginning, the feels are the feels, but you cannot almost absorb that on behalf of your clients because it will just take it out of you and it's not healthy for you.
Right.
And so there's a level of neutrality that you have to look at in a way that a service industry does not always look at because we want to
Mhm.
we're a service part, right? We want to help, we want to make money, but we also would not be doing this if we didn't want to give people the joy of travel. And so to give that feels good, to not give that feels bad. And so you want to make sure that you manage your own emotions and what you carry in your own self when you're dealing with this type of thing.
Yeah. Super important. Super important
Yeah.
to remember, and it's easy for us to say it right now. It's a little more challenging in the moment, right? When you're dealing with somebody who's upset about the trip that they've been looking forward to for a year. But things happen. You have to be prepared as part of the proactive to have the information, communicate with the people, you've talked to them about it, and what's next in your recommendations about dealing with these kinds of situations?
I think that the final one that I will say has nothing to do with the client, but it's everything to do with the advisor. And
Mm,
that is to, like we talked about before, seek support and guidance when you need to. That could be having an attorney that you need to talk to, having contacts in the industry, talking to your partner, talking to colleagues, just making sure that you have the outlets that you need to. And then really getting into the taking care, the self care
mhm.
that you're not going to just do. Like, I'm not going to get up at 5 a.m. and just do a meditation and go running the day that there's like, you know, a drug cartel like happening, like unless I've already got that system in place where it's part
Right.
of like the routine that I do. I'm getting enough sleep. I'm doing all the things. It sounds kind of, I don't know, like, yeah, yeah, of course. But it is really, really important in those times to take care of yourself, to have the boundaries. If something's happening, of course, after 5 o'clock, you're going to answer. But
Mhm.
I would not be scrolling all night long. Like you're going to get depleted. You've got to be able to have the way to refill yourself for your clients, for your family, for yourself, for everybody. And so I think that that's the one that we oftentimes in society, not just in this industry, overlook, right? Like we,
Right.
okay, I won't exercise today. I won't break for lunch. I'll just keep going. And that really
I'll
long
cancel
term,
that evening out with friends so that I can stay home
exactly.
and
And that's probably you
work
need
on more.
anything, right?
Right.
Is to just have your own outlets and go to a book club or something.
Right. Something I do on a very
Everybody loves
regular
book
basis.
clubs.
Yes. Yes.
That's our outlet. But yeah, so that's I think that like I said, it's not a total all-encompassing list of things to do, but those are just some tips that we've either told our advisors, heard from our advisors. We try to hold the space for them where they are and celebrate the good times and then support during the more challenging times. And so, it's a privilege to be able to do that. I would say, I feel that way. I'm sure you feel that way to be able to lean in to the community as much as we do and be there for them through the thick and thin of it.
Yeah, and I that's one of the things. This is sort of a tangent of what we're talking about, but it is in line with what we're talking about. And I was on a call the other night for a book club, actually,
Mhm.
and
For
it
sure.
was yeah, a bunch of different people in the travel industry, but not Gifted Travel Network. And there was a woman there who's a travel advisor who is on her own completely. She operates under her own credentials. She doesn't have a host, no consortia, and she was talking about how isolated she is. And you really, I feel like you really have to have a community of some sort in this industry. There's too much going on. There's just so many things that happen that you need somebody else who understands, who gets it, whether that's through your host agency or you develop a close group of colleagues who are in a similar situation, or through a consortia or through an ASTA chapter or something. Don't you think that that's, I know you think that's important too.
I do. It got me through the pandemic,
Mm,
honestly, where all of the groups that we were I mean, GTN was hosting us every week, I think, honestly.
yeah.
It was a town hall that we got together every week for a really,
Sometimes
really long
multiple times a week.
multiple times a week, and then I was also in some smaller groups of people, and that shared
Mhm.
experience is and I would say it transcends just this industry. I would say that if you are in a
Mhm.
business by yourself, you have to find the people that understand, speak the same language, speak the same frustrations, same laughs, right? Some things are just funny, right? But they're you can tell your partner and they're gonna be like, I mean, that's not that funny. You're like, it's hilarious because the right people have to know the right things. It- then,
Right.
so that is what lifts us up, and that's what helps us problem solve. If I had to sit I mean, think about the amount of times I constantly am teamsing people, like, "Help me think this through. Like, what do I need to do
Right.
for this?" Like, this and I think that if you don't have that, it is a disadvantage to
It
just being
is.
a good business owner.
I did that just a few minutes before we started this podcast. I sent a message to a group of people that you were included in and said, "This is what I'm getting ready to do. Any thoughts or concerns?" Just
Yep,
because sometimes people, you need that extra perspective. You might have come back and said, "Oh, but did you think about this?" Or, "Oh, have you thought about that?" Or, "Make sure to
yep.
include this or make sure to include that." So it is critically important. And I would consider that probably one of the most important proactive things for crisis management is having that group of people that you can go to. And I will ask you to weigh in on this. So you don't really think about this when you're booking for clients, but what role do partners play in all this? How important is it to consider a partner's, whether it's their track record or their reputation or that you've worked with them before or that they're preferred with some organization you're part of, in choosing that so that you have an ally when something happens?
It's so vital, and I think it's really overlooked. We do talk a lot about choosing your partners and almost like dating a little bit, to
Mhm.
see what you like about communication style, how quick to respond, like what kind of platform do they have for booking. But that's really just the surface of what's important because what's really important is that you have a relationship. Like we've built that within our host agency, that we have a relationship with our preferred partners that if something comes up, we know that we can call someone. Can they solve every single problem? No. Some of them are just not. It just is what it is. But that relationship, this entire industry's relationship driven by
100%.
everything. Relationship with your client, relationship with your partner, all of it. And so having fiscally sound partner, right? That they're still going to be here if something happens, like in a crisis, like the pandemic, or that they've got business development managers that are reaching out to you and being proactive and helping you learn, product or things like that. Building those relationships are so, so important. That's a great, great point that you made there.
Yeah, those relationships can be the difference between a good outcome for your clients and a disappointing outcome for your clients. So it is critically important to think about that. You mentioned
Yeah.
earlier about having an attorney, and I know that we at GTN have different people who there's different attorneys that they've worked with who specifically work in the travel industry. At what point do you think it's necessary to reach out to an attorney? I mean, can you give me an example of sometime you might want to reach out to an attorney and get an opinion on something?
Well, let me put it this way. I would rather that you not have to reach out to someone when you are in crisis.
Right.
I think what we recommend is that, yes, we do have some really, really solid relationships with a couple of attorneys in the industry. One, for when you start your business, right? Having your
Mhm.
terms and conditions, your website policy, your cookie policies, your privacy policies, making sure that your own terms and conditions are not just a boilerplate, but they are very specific to your business and how you do your business. So again, that proactive reach out is super important. The other one that we look at now more than ever, because this industry is growing with having different advisors in it, is that having a trademark attorney, looking at your
Mhm.
brand, looking at your name, looking at your content, making sure that all of that is solid. Like, we will have our advisors actually do a search. Is this a risk name that if I adopt this name? Is it We've had people that have had to contact attorneys because their brand has been replicated and just changed the name. And so there's some of that we've had names that are very, very close. So a lot of those things are creeping in that didn't used to creep in, but having, again, proactively made that relationship in doing some of that. And does it cost money? It does. It costs a lot less than having to go to court, I would say, for any sort of infringement on copyright or trademark. But the other part of it, I would say that is more important. I think people sometimes think of attorneys are like, oh, I'm going to have my lawyer fight this for me, whatever it is, if there's a client complaint or something like that. It's actually not. And you can disagree, but for me, that's your errors and omissions policy, right? You need to have your own insurance that is very specific to your business so that if there is a chargeback, if there is a claim against you, sometimes to no fault of your own, you could be brought into something. Doesn't happen a lot, but it does sometimes happen. You reach out to your E&O carrier, your
Right.
insurance, and then they set you up for getting through that. So it's not often that I would say, call our guy because of this or that, because you should already have everything set up for your own support system in place so that you shouldn't have to do that too reactionary.
One thing that I mean, I guess talking about attorneys made me think about documentation and paperwork and that sort of stuff. What kind of recommendations do you have for people as they're in the midst of all this, of keeping records or documentation of their communication with their client about the situation? Because after it's all over, if there's an insurance claim being filed, or maybe the clients, want to bring up some dispute with the partner, or whatever the case might be, you want to be able to have records of what happened, when, who decided what, and ideally that's going to be written, whether it's email or messages. What suggestions do you have about that?
So I have many because because this does come up a lot. And I think if we're talking about best practice, even if you do have a client that only texts, do not I would not try to keep text as your documentation. I would always follow up with like, "Hey, I'm gonna send you an email. I just need you to sign off on this." Emails are okay if you've got a thread in a folder that you're keeping everything together, but perfect case scenario would be that your client relation management, your CRM would house all of that, right? So
Mm.
everything, every communication that you're sending could go through that and it will be documented. You'll have all of your terms and conditions in one place signed. So for ease of use for you, like it's all there, right? And
Right.
you can see when they've opened things, you can see if they've looked at it, if they've signed it, follow up if they haven't. So that for me is like the best way that you could do it. I know, having done it myself, that there's a lot of different ways that people communicate, and sometimes it's through email and sometimes it's your CRM, but trying to merge that in and maybe doing a couple of ways to kind of just fold it into your CRM, but that would be my best recommendation, is to keep everything housed in that platform that is meant specifically for that.
And that may mean you have to push your clients a little bit, right? And they may send you a Facebook Messenger message,
Oh,
which,
that's true.
or some other
Yeah.
random reach out, and
Yep.
you may have to say, "Look, I need to keep all this in one place, so I
Yep.
need you to respond to this or that." And if there's somewhere that's not possible for whatever reason, but if they have access to text, they probably have access to email, and they can respond that way, because it does make it a lot easier when you're trying to compile stuff, if you have to compile things later.
Totally, and honestly, that timestamp is really important sometimes.
Sure.
So keeping that as tight as you can is helping in the long term if you do have any things. And again, this is not a conversation to scare anybody or anything, but
Yeah.
it's just the reality of like being a business owner and setting yourself up for success and not, being frustrated later is really important to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I want to certainly end on a positive note. And I think giving people the items that we talked about in the beginning, the proactive steps to take of getting everything in place is incredibly important. And as you said, we're not trying to scare anybody, but these things are going to happen. Even if it's as simple as the client flight was delayed and they missed a connection, and now they're not gonna be able to get to the Maldives for on
Mhm.
time, and they're gonna miss a night at their hotel and whatever, and clients, understandably, they're gonna be upset. All they can think about is that overwater bungalow and that beautiful water, and they're stuck sleeping in an airport somewhere. So they're gonna be upset. And how do you deal with people who are upset like that?
I mean, I think that we could do an entire podcast on managing conflict and dealing with difficult people because some people just show up difficult. And so you're like, please don't let anything happen with this client. Please let everything go okay. But
And
I
that
think
might be
it's a
something
catch.
you wanna think about before you take them on as a
Oh,
client. If you
100%.
are
Yeah. If
already
you've got someone
thinking
that you're dreading that's showing up, you're just like, yeah, I can't think about the law, like what would happen if there was some sort of under pressure situation. It ain't gonna be pretty. So yeah, you got to keep that in mind with like who you take on as clients because it's your business. You can take
right,
on anybody you want or nobody. It doesn't, well, you won't be a business owner if you don't take on anybody, but you know what I mean? Like you can be
right.
very selective in curating who your clients are to set yourself up for reasonable people whenever possible. But
And
it
listen
goes
to
back.
your gut. If your gut is already screaming, "I don't wanna work with this person," don't work with that person.
Yeah. If within the first 2 or 3 phone calls or emails, you're like, you just get that feeling, like, that's a no. That's a hard no.
Yeah.
So, keeping that in mind will help for sure, but you are probably going to have some sort of situation that does come up and they're frustrated, and I would be certainly frustrated if I was supposed to be in an underwater bungalow and, like, here we are. So, the best tip that I can give for that is that I would let a client vent, not be abusive, but, like,
Mhm.
share the frustration, be neutral, be empathetic, be validating, like, "Yeah, this sucks. I mean, I want you there too," right? So you're not taking that on, right? You have to look at it from a neutral, like, they're mad at the situation. They might even say, they're mad at me, but, like, let's be real, they can't be mad at me. I did not change a flight pattern, right? Or a delay or a cancellation or a volcano. So you've got to be able to step back and say, I know that they're being angry and mean or whatever, hopefully not mean. That's not on me. They just need to vent for a minute within reason. And I need to say, I understand how you feel. There's nothing we can do at this point except you will get there tomorrow. And I've modified the flight and we've rerouted. And so while this is, and when you come back, we can look and see if travel insurance will cover that delay or interruption or whatever it is. And until that point, you just have to look forward to tomorrow. And we do the best we can. So there's really nothing that you can do other than like neutralize the situation, not take it personally, and look proactively how to figure out the next steps.
Okay.
Hey, Travel Business Unpacked listeners, Meredith Calloway here. If you're enjoying the podcast, I've got something else I think you'll love. The book, The Seven Figure Travel Entrepreneur, is officially out now. It's all about building a business that's intentional, profitable, and actually sustainable, and leads to six-figure earnings. And I've made the entire first chapter free for you. It's my way of saying thank you for listening and being a part of this community as you build your luxury travel business. You can download it now at giftedtravelnetwork.com/book. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Let's end on a fun note
Okay.
because I know we talked
Because
about
we're
a lot
fun.
of very heavy stuff because we are fun people, absolutely. And the travel industry is fun. It, except for when we have to deal with issues like this. tell me about a fun trip that you have coming up that you're looking forward to. I know the
Well, I've
answer to
got
this already.
I'm super excited about it. Also a little bit nervous because I am going skiing tomorrow in Montana with a group of friends and very excited to go. Very nervous because I have not skied in half a decade. And so I got all my gear, I'm ready to go. And I'm also just did my travel insurance because I was like, oh, I better make sure that if I have to get carried off in a stretcher, that it's
Yeah,
that I got some extra
exactly.
first
I'm
payer coverage, so I'm really
there you go.
excited about that. It'll be nice to have a week. Yeah.
Awesome.
How
That
about
sounds
you? You doing
wonderful.
anything fun?
So it's a little bit further down the line, but I'm very excited to be going on another Christmas markets river cruise this Christmas, actually over Christmas, with my husband, my sister, and my brother-in-law. So I've done Christmas markets before, and I'm super excited to get to do that again with my family. My sister's never done that before, so she's going to enjoy that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that'll be great. It's fun to see a place that you've seen before through people that haven't the eyes of someone that hasn't been there yet. That's very cool.
Absolutely, and I've been to Vienna before, which is where we're gonna start, and I've been there before at Christmas, and I know how magical it is, so I'm just excited about that, and I'll just have to get through the rest of the spring, summer, fall, and it'll be here before we know it. Although at the rate this year is going, it might be 5 years from now before we get there. So,
And then be here before we know it. Yeah, 2 things can
that's
be
right.
true at the same time. It seems like
Yes.
that's the norm
It is.
lately.
Well, Kristen, thank you for being on the Travel Business Unpacked podcast. I think, when this podcast started, the whole purpose was to provide information and insights and unpack things that people don't normally hear from real life stories and real experiences. And you don't get any more real than hearing from somebody who's working with advisors every day, mentors every day, and knows all this stuff firsthand. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I mean, I love to talk, so this it's just been fun.
Thank you.